Welcome to our very first Athlete and Learning Lab. This is the personal branding session in partnership with our career service partner, AthLife. My name is Connor Ford. I'm a player manager with the NFLPA, and I work on our programming related to our professional and career development resources and programming. So we want to get things rolling right away. So I want to introduce to you our senior player manager, Dior Ginyard, who is going to give an overview of our athlete and platform and then introduce our featured guest for the day.
My name is Dior Ginyard. I'm a senior player manager at the NFL Players Association. What we've tried to do with this athlete and initiative is get you guys excited about your off the field goals and endeavors and passions and careers. So hopefully today's session around personal branding will kind of get you a step forward to either building on what your and is or helping you get closer to identifying what that looks like. And so with that, I'll hand it over to my good friend, Demario Davis, to kick us off.
What's going on, gentlemen? It's an honor for me to be on. Hopefully I can be of some assistance today. I am a linebacker with the New Orleans Saints. I'm getting ready to enter into my 9th season. I have a wife of 8 years. We have four kids, ranging from 6 years old to 8 months. And off the field, I'm heavily involved in philanthropy and community work. I am a brand ambassador for United Way. I've been working with them for about 4 years. I am a member of the Players Coalition and a part of their task force. I've been working with them for about 3 years, and also I'm the leader of my own, co-founder of my own foundation with my wife, and we've been doing that for about 6 years. And so we're heavily involved in the community, and that's where my aspirations lie outside of the game. And so when they asked me about talking about personal brand building, I think it's important for all the athletes to know that you have two brands. You have the brand that's the athlete that has to be built. That's what gives you the platform, and then how you use the platform is the and piece, and that's a brand in itself. And so being able to talk more about that and networking, I'm excited to do that with you guys today.
With that, we are going to kick things over to AthLife. So I want to introduce to you Carrie White, AthLife's COO, and she's going to get going with her team and rolling through the presentation.
So as Connor mentioned, I serve as the Chief Operating Officer at AthLife. Have been with the company for the past 6.5 years. Prior to that, I was on campus providing academic support to college athletes for over 15 years. For the past over 15 years, AthLife has supported thousands of professional and post-professional athletes to meeting and exceeding their academic goals through the partnerships that we have on the slide that you see here.
What we are doing now with this particular slide is going to be talking about networking, right? And what are the benefits of networking? Just to give you a couple of those, I know this won't be an exhaustive list, but there are some important ones on the board. So they help develop your skill set, right? Networking helps develop your skill set. If you just listen, observe other people in your network, read things about other people in your network or from other people in your network, and talk to people in your network, you'll develop a better skill set. You'll learn how to do things better that pertain to your particular career. So that's one big advantage for a good high quality network. Other thing is to stay on top of industry trends, right? So if you're talking to people who are actively engaged in your particular career field, you'll be able to kind of tell, hey, what's leaving the industry as well as what's coming into the industry, where the industry is going. So you'll stay ahead of the curve for those particular industry trends and kind of get ahead of the game. You can also kind of gain access to the hidden job market. Hopefully everyone knows or recognizes that many jobs or most jobs, depending on the source that you go to, are filled by referrals. That means by the time you see that job position on Indeed or Monster or even the company website, the job's more than likely already filled. So referrals, having people that are connected or know people who are connected is very advantageous for you. The other thing, you can meet people that could be potential partners, potential clients, as well as potential mentors. So there's a lot of different types of people that you can meet as you go about networking. So take advantage of those opportunities to meet as many people as you can in those professional environments. And the last thing I would say is a great benefit for networking is that you can access resources that you may be unaware of. Let's say if you're having a conversation with someone within your network and you're talking about a problem or issue that you're trying to resolve, they might be able to say, hey, you know what, I went through that same situation or issue before, or I know someone who has been through that. And they can refer you to another person or maybe a website or another organization that could help you out with resolving that particular issue or problem. So gaining access to resources you may not have been aware of before. So as you go about creating and cultivating these professional relationships, keep in mind that a good network will be diverse. Diversity is very important in your network. Diversity in connections as well as ideas. So it's important to have a diverse network, people from all different fields, people from all different levels, to make sure that you have a good, effective network for yourself. The diversity of ideas comes from the fact that, hey, you know what if you have you're going through an issue or talking through a problem, it's important to gain a perspective from all different sides of the issue. So if all of your people in your network all think the same way or hold the same perspective, it's not going to benefit you very much to discuss that particular issue with your network. So a great diverse network of ideas will give you a greater perspective and give you a better, more well-rounded picture of what your issue and problem is, so you can come to better conclusions and have better results for yourself. And people recommend and refer people that they, number one, that they like, and number two, that they trust, right? So trust is very important within your network. And trust takes a lot of time. So you want to make sure that as you're meeting with people, especially people who are high executive level people, that you're not asking for big favors, after 2 weeks or a month of knowing them. That's not the proper way to do those types of things. That takes time. Trust takes time. So make sure that you're in it for the long haul and not just looking for an immediate payoff from connecting with someone. So what does all of this mean? This means that you need to be cultivating and strengthening your relationships before you ever need anything. The last thing is you need to be networking now. You're all active players. You're still playing. You need to be networking now. That's important. So like I said, it's a long-term situation. So start networking now. You need to, no matter what stage of your career development is in, you need to start networking because those benefits can start paying off not only now, but also later. So I wanted to ask a question of Demario, how has networking benefited you in the time that you've been doing it?
Yeah, I remember probably was about 4 years ago when I kind of came to the NFLPA externship and started to learn about the power of networking. And I had really never put too much thought into it. Before that, I've always been a social person, but not necessarily understanding what it meant to be a networker. And in short, what I learned was network is just building relationships that don't necessarily benefit you right now, but could potentially benefit you later. And it has helped a lot since then. Everywhere I go now, I go with the intent to network with somebody or somebody different at different spaces, and not necessarily for a business relationship or a partner relationship, but it's just meeting people, being interested in what they are about, establishing that relationship. And usually what I do, whether it's an event that the team has set up or an individual event that I have through an endorsement or something that one of my agents set up, I just go and I meet people and have conversations with them, and I'll just get their cards. I'll get their email card. I'll get their business cards and connect with them via email, and I'll just establish that relationship. And once we've engaged in some type of dialogue, I'll usually hear what it is that they're interested in, what it is that they do, and then I'll just follow up that conversation in email form, and that starts a dialogue chain, and that starts a relationship or somewhat of a association or a friendship. And what I found in that, as time goes by, months go by, those people will either have something going on and they'll reach back out to me, or I'll have something going on and be like, oh, this person is in that space. Maybe they'll know more about the topic, and I'll reach out to them. And so because we have the opportunity to be in so many different places around so many different types of people, those relationships or those networking are very random at the time, but you just end up creating relationships. And so a lot of the relationships that I've leaned heavily on are ones that are community activism driven, or something where it's community building driven. So I have people in different states who help out with the things that I do in Mississippi in my foundation. I've partnered with other people to do projects that they were working on, and those people turned around and supported my project. So that's kind of like how the philanthropy world works. But I also have great relationships with people who are in the real estate sector. I have great relationships with people who work on Wall Street and do hedge funds. And I have great relationships with these people that I'm not actively looking to use the relationship. And but it's a sort of a friendship that's established. Now, if I ever need to call on those people, I feel like they won't think that I'm just calling them for something because I need something. They'll know that I'm talking to them out of the nature of our relationship. And that's how it's helped me. So I've built friends like you talked about in a lot of diverse places, and those people are able to give me, and sometimes we're just talking, have a conversation. So I'll go to New York, and one of the people who I've talked to via email, I'll ask, can I take them out to lunch since I'm in town? And those people are more than willing to make space because we've had an ongoing dialogue, and we just pick up, and we're not talking about anything initially except the weather, but we'll talk more about their business. They'll talk more about my endeavors. We'll see if there's some synergy sometimes, and a lot of times I'm able to learn from them aspects of what allowed them to become successful, and I'm able to internalize that and use that without them necessarily giving me advice, hey, this is what you should do, but I can look at some of the information that I'm learning from them just via conversation and see, okay, I see why that person is so successful. I see the type of people that they have around them. So I need to do that in my space. I need to be organized like this person was. I need to assemble it like this person. And so I think it's just relationships. It's relationships that build and grow over time without necessarily needing the relationship at the time. But when you do need the relationship, now you have this whole bank account of resources, people capital that you can pull on, pull information from, pull activism from.
Right. I absolutely love Demario's answer. He actually honed in on several items that I feel are important. What do you guys think are some of the things you should do when you are networking?
I would say try to find a photo of that person. Because the one thing that I struggle with, we meet so many people, and I'm not the greatest with names, but I'm great with photos and pictures. Google, LinkedIn, boom, screenshot, make sure you attach that photo up under that person's contact. Because for me, it's all about the picture.
One of the things I try to do, just if you're networking in a group setting or anything like that, if there's one particular person you want to talk to, kind of easing your way into the conversation, whether if it's a group of people, not just going in there and being like, all right, I want to talk to this dude, let me butt in, but just trying to work your way into the conversation with everyone else, and then, trying to get to that person at some point in time.
When you are in a group setting, be prepared to talk about things that not just include football. Sure, conversations will come up about football often, and most of the times when those conversations come up, that's when the most people will kind of come around. But your ability to take a conversation, somebody introduces something about football, being able to take that and then transition to something that you're passionate about or something that somebody else had said in the conversation, to keep the conversation away from football and show that you are engaged and that you are attentive. That's going to make the person who was talking about whatever, that's going to make that person more engaged than you. Or you can take it, and if you see the person that you want to talk to, introduce an idea or a topic, and then ask that person that's standing near you, like, what do you think about this? And so, and give that person the floor. And so you being an athlete who takes the light off of you and put it on somebody else, they're going to be very appreciative of that. And you make sure you don't do it in ways like you're putting them on the spot, but just kind of softly, like toss like a softball idea out that everybody can talk about, that includes everybody. Because when you talk about football, you're going to probably be the only person, you're the expert at that area. So you're going to be the only one who can really engage at that. But if you transition it to something that's a popular, say we get on the other side of this COVID-19, you know, it's like, yeah, I didn't know we were going to, you talk about football, like I didn't know we were going to be, when we were going to be able to get back to playing football, you know, being trapped in quarantine for so long. And that was just a strenuous time for myself and my family. You know, how was that time? What did you guys do? And, you know, and then introduce that person and say, what did you do during the quarantine? And that now brings the conversation to something everybody can relate to. And it gets that person talking about their passions and the things that they care about. And they'll probably start talking about their business. And then you can pick up the conversation around their business when you guys move to an individual setting. Like, hey, I heard you say something about your business and you do X, Y, and Z. Can you elaborate more on that? And so those are smooth ways where you didn't just go in and try to take over the conversation and say, hey, I'm this important person. Hey, pay attention to me. This is where I'm going to do, well, I didn't get to see who was talking a while ago, who said that, but.
This is Jake. You don't have to do, in my opinion, and sort of history on it, you don't have to do too much on the first time. Just sort of set a good impression, meet the person, exchange contact information, and then really just get ready for the follow-up to make sure you email them or reach out to them later that day or the next day. And it sort of leaves enough of a first impression and the person wanting to know more about you and know more about your goals and things like that. So you don't do too much too soon.
My name's Donald Brown. I'm one of Athlife's advisors. Prior to coming on board with Athlife, I played in the NFL for a handful of years and then transitioned out and worked in some roles with student athlete development, more on the life skills portion, and then transitioned into Athlife and other nonprofit endeavors. But this is going to be more the application portion of the conversation. And I want to cover something that's going to come up regardless of it's a networking opportunity, an interviewing opportunity, or even when you're presenting your brand as to, you know, whether on social media or just getting it out there, tell me about yourself, right? This is going to come up all often than not. And, you know, so we want to touch base as to kind of what are some things that we want to focus on when we do put ourselves out there, when we do put our brand out there, so we can put ourselves out there in the light that we want. And at the most essence, we want to capture where we've been, where we're looking to go, or where we've been, and what's the value that I could bring to an organization, or what's the value I could bring to an organization. So with that said, I want to open it up to the group. Is there anything that we might want to cover in that framework or kind of have in our tool belt as things we want to utilize or make sure we touch on at some point? As Jake mentioned, you don't want to cover everything, but if you have a framework as hey, these are the things I might want to cover and then be able to utilize. So would anybody want to share? And Demario, you did a great job when you introduced yourself. You know, you talked about your family. You talked about how long you've played. You've talked about things that are important to you, whether it's your foundation or a community service. So you did a great job. What are some other things we might want to consider when somebody says, hey, tell me about yourself?
That's what I was trying to do. I always try to just cover, like, you know, this is what I've done. This is what I'm about, you know, like my faith, my family, and then community, and then what I do with my platform, philanthropy, community. And it kind of shows like, this is what I care about. This is where my passion lies. But you also kind of want to hit on like your skill sets, things that are your gifts. You want to make sure that you show that. If you're a leader, make sure that you express that. If you are a good glue person in bringing people together, you want to make sure that you show that. If you're charismatic, you want to make sure you show that. And you don't necessarily have to say these things. Just understand that can be communicated in your nonverbal communication. You know, people can look at you and be like, oh, this person I'm an effective communicator, or I believe I'm an effective communicator. But that I don't have to say, hey, I'm really good at communicating. The person can pick up, like, he's not stammering over his words. He's speaking very clearly. He's well processed, well thought out. So that person can pick up, oh, this person is a fluent communicator. And the fact that you're bold is probably going to speak that most of us are alpha males. They're going to show like, oh, this person has certain leadership qualities. Like, they don't mind being out front. Like, so a lot of that stuff can kind of transcend through your messaging, but the way you word it, you can either say your skill set or you should show your skill set in what you do. And so that's another important, before you're able to tell about yourself, you need to know about yourself, like know where your strengths are, know where your weaknesses are, and kind of express those as well, not just what you've done and where you're trying to go. Make sure that you show that you have some of the tool sets to help people go where they're trying to go.
Exactly. That's great. Anybody else have anything that they add or touch on in an initial conversation with somebody?
I was just going to say, not everybody gives you the same amount of time, and not everybody gets the same amount of time in every sort of first meeting. So prepare for if you're only getting 30 seconds, because, you know, for depending where you are and how many people are there or whatever the setting is, you may only get 30 seconds to, you know, say a little bit about yourself, hear a little bit about them, and just make sure you get their contact of some sort and, you know, just build on it in the future.
For sure. That's great. That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that. And Demario, thank you as well. And so there's 4 things I want to touch on briefly. And we talked on it a bit, but the first component is knowing who your audience is. And Demario said, hey, you know, there are times where you're going to be talking to people that don't understand the football jargon. They're not going to understand football language, right? So being cognizant of that dynamic. Also having a game plan, if you know going into an event or whether you're on social media, things like, hey, these are the people that are reading my stories or watching my YouTube clips, finding commonalities, common grounds, whether it may be where you're from, maybe where you went to school, major, hobbies, things like that. So the more you can game plan leading up to an event or an opportunity, the easier it is to perform, right? Just like in the playing days, you know, Monday through Saturday, you put in the work, Sunday's a lot easier. Other things to consider, and we already touched on nonverbal cues, so understanding who the other person is. And if you're heading into a situation where you don't know the other person, and like Brian said, coming out and asking questions about them, that's just an easy way to get it out, and that helps you tailor your approach. Other things to consider, and Demario said this as well, as understanding more than, right, than the athlete. So within the athlete and space, right, that ... is key. So what are the transferable skills that you've developed through sports, that we've developed through sports, that you can talk about? And you don't have to necessarily listen like Demario said, it can come across, but you can show tangible examples of how we lead meetings, how we research, how we communicate, how we work with diverse groups of individuals on a day-to-day annual basis. And then last 2 things are maybe, hey, where are you looking to go? What are some of your goals in that athlete and ... What are your goals in that ... to go beyond that? And then the last thing is, if there's one thing, like Jake said, you don't know how long you have these opportunities. So if you have 30 seconds with somebody, what's the one thing that you would want them to remember about you? Here are 4 questions that you could just kind of marinate on for a second as you kind of build out what I would want to say to somebody. And let's use the context of, hey, I'm going to be applying for an NFLPA externship. And when you apply for an externship, there's a screening process that goes in place, and they want to know who's applying for these opportunities from an employer standpoint. Who am I bringing in? So look at these 3 questions, and if you could just take maybe 30 to 45 seconds and just figure out what your framework or answer would be to these, please. Demario, I want to put you on the spot here. So say you're applying for an externship on Capitol Hill. It's evident that you know, community endeavors, social injustice initiatives are very important to you domestically and also abroad. So if somebody says, you know, somebody who's reviewing your application from Capitol Hill says, Demario, why is this important? Why is this externship important to you? Tell me about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, what would be some things that you want to touch on?
I think the reason why the externship would be very important for me is because I'm trying to grow in the spaces of learning how to impact the community. I feel like the chief experts in this field will be legislators of understanding not only the issues that are plaguing communities, but how do you effectively create change in doing that? And so I have a little bit of experience in that with the Players Coalition, a group of NFL players who are working together to create change and help with systematic oppression. And we've been able to work with various advocacy groups in many different cities and many different states. I work with advocacy groups to hear the problems of the people on the ground. And we've also had the ability to walk in and meet with legislators who have the power to create change in the communities that are being affected. And so we've been able to work with the people on the ground and the people who are at the top who have the ability to create change. And so I think it would be very a very great opportunity for me to be able to work with people on Capitol Hill, be able to see what actually goes into creating that change that the people on the ground are asking for. What are the leverage points that have to change? What is the recipe that has to come together for that change to happen? And so it's one thing to want change, it's another thing to make it happen. And I would love the opportunity to work with people who have the ability to do that and show what goes into making it happen, because it would grow my understanding of the people that I am working with and the people that I care about.
Carrie, what would you say that Demario did very well?
He really listened to the framework that you set up, and he offered very specific things quickly to connect his experience and passion to the externship. So he left me wanting to ask questions, which is exactly what you're trying to do. In a short opportunity to respond, you want to leave the listener like, I want to talk to this guy more. I want to learn more. If we had more time, we'd have a chance to ask Mario more questions, but we don't. So that's what I would say he did really well.
All right, so practice makes perfect. And just for the context of the group, I mean, it's great to talk about theory, but I think the most important thing is applying it, right? So I would love to open this up to the group, and maybe say you have an upcoming networking opportunity to get on the phone with somebody, or maybe you're heading into your free agency and you haven't landed on a team yet, and a team calls you in, and one of the first questions they ask is, hey, tell me about yourself. Or maybe you're preparing for next year's externship, like some guys are already. I would love a volunteer or two to just participate.
Darius Jennings, heading into year 6 in the league, from Baltimore, and very passionate about where I come from, where my city is, and you know, I try to use my platform to really just give it back. You know, there are a lot of things going on within the city. Kids are less fortunate and don't have the opportunities, and I was fortunate enough to make it out. So now I'm just involved here. I partner with a program, Next One Up. It's for high school kids, you know, to give them extra tutoring, extra training, SAT prep, just to allow them to have that extra advantage. I helped start a youth football program here, and I'm an advocate for Baltimore ceasefire, which is pretty much just stopping killings. I lost relatives, I lost a brother, so yeah, I mean, really just trying to reshape our city, take our city back, you know, reclaim what's ours.
So with this slide, we are talking about the different fields of play, right? So what are the different places that you can make connections and build relationships with people? For instance, the easiest and most obvious is in person, right? Everywhere you go, that's where you are. So you could be making connections and building relationships virtually anywhere. Another easy one to say is social media. All of them may not fit who you are or what you want to be or how you want to use them, but there are some things out there that should be able to be a good fit for you to be able to promote yourself and promote the image that you want to put out there. Your hometown, I think as Darius mentioned in his answer, he's passionate about his hometown, right? So people are passionate about the hometowns, the cities, and the states that they're from.
I guess I'll elaborate a little more on the social media side with LinkedIn. I think it's pretty easy to build connections there and also kind of send out friend requests and accept them. But to take it a step further, maybe making it a little bit more personable by sending a personal message after you accept or request a friendship from someone. Kind of introduce yourself quickly in a quick message, nothing too overbearing, but just kind of letting them know that, you know, of your intentions and of your abilities and things that you want them to know that'll, you know, help build up your application of who you are, so that they can have a little snapshot of who you are just from that message, instead of just accepting the friend request. Now they have that message of, you know, this little quick, summary of who you are and your intentions. I think that's always a good step to take.
They all have a personal brand, whether you realize it or not. So it's up to you whether you want to kind of take control of that brand and represent yourself the way you want to be represented out in public. And keep in mind that the messaging and the images that you put out on social media should be consistent in order to build a solid and strong brand for yourself. Organizations, businesses, as well as individuals, we like consistency. So if they see one image on LinkedIn, but when they go on Snapchat or some other social media, it's a totally different image, sometimes the opposite image. They get confused, and people in organizations, they don't like inconsistency. So make sure you're consistent across the board with all the social media that you're using and all the images that you're putting out there on social media. One last thing, everything that you post is either adding value or creating noise. And what I mean by that, obviously, I think everybody knows what adding value is, but creating noise is basically either something that is distracting from your value, or it's subtracting from your value. So we know a lot of people that have very noisy social media, but we also know people that have social media that is constantly adding value to their personal brand. So we want to make sure that we're always adding value to our brand instead of creating noise.
Hey, Matt, this is Dior. I wanted to chime in and kind of echo something you mentioned. And I think it's important for all the athletes on the call to understand, like, as you come into this league, you guys are in a position of like influence, right? And you all have a chance to use that to your advantage. And so when you look at a lot of these senior level executives at these companies that you're aspiring to work at once your playing days are over, they're huge fans of y'all, more fans of you are than than you are of them. And so take advantage of that. And that's why programs like the externship is important to get involved in, because these are companies that we're adding more and more companies every year because they're excited to bring you guys in and to teach you all. And so the goal for you all is to take advantage of that, right? While you have why you can lean on the fact that you're still playing. And even when you're former players too, you have to your advantage the fact that you played in the NFL. That's an advantage, and that's influence. And on the good part of that is that you can use it to your advantage. The bad part is, like Matt mentioned, people are looking at what you're saying too. And so just being very cognizant and calculated in how you portray yourself. Demario is a good person to look at. Like, look at his social media. Look how he talks about what he's passionate about and his interests are. He's very cognizant of what he's posting. But also he uses his platform to his advantage as well. And then he's done that with getting an internship with the United Way and to build on that afterwards. So just be cognizant. You all have influence. You don't have to be the starting quarterback to have influence. These executives, these CEOs that'll be hiring you at some point, they're fans of yours. Take advantage of it.
Real quick, and then to Dior's point with the CEOs, and you're thinking like sometimes it can be there's a bridge sometimes from what we see to CEOs, but there are, and I'm looking at David Thornton on the chat. There are directors of player engagement like David Thornton that are standing in your corner and willing to make the call, put an email in to help bridge the gap from you and another individual. Like the externships is another great opportunity. And so are your agents, right? Agents aren't just, agents are great to help with contracts, but also expand your network as well. So there's a lot of people in your corner that want to help. So use those people for bridges. They're great. They want to help.
So one of the quotes that we often share when we talk about networking is that the opposite of networking is not working. I'll say it again. The opposite of networking is not working. It's something that you want to be thinking about regularly, chipping away one thing at a time. There was a lot of great strategies that were shared today. A lot of good things that you're already doing. You all, I see in the chat that you've offered some takeaways, some new things that you're going to add to your toolkit. If you want to continue to learn more, one way to do that, we offer an online self-paced course that provides some additional resources. If you're interested in getting access to that, shoot me an email. I'll get you enrolled and logged in. Again, just some additional tools that you can add to your toolkit. Chip away, have access to the resources of the tools, some of which that we talked about today. At this point, I will turn it back to Demario for some closing comments.
Guys, I would just encourage you all to soak up as much of the information as possible. Just like you get better year by year, on the field, this process is gonna continue going on long after you are done playing, but you want to start working on this now. Understand that the athlete is very much important. Don't think that you can just focus on the end. You have to focus on being an athlete. All this comes because you are a great athlete. So make sure that you don't just start to think about brand building outside of the game. You still have to take care of your craft on the field. You still, the more you do on the field is going to provide you with more opportunities and bigger opportunities. The better player you are, the more opportunities, the bigger opportunities that are going to come to you. But at the same time, you don't have to be the superstar athlete like Dior said. just because all that is more doors. Being a great athlete, it gives you more doors, it gives you bigger doors to open. But you can be, you know, just a role player guy who doesn't go notice that gets that one door off the field, and you can go in and maximize it more than that superstar athlete. Because just because you have the door, it's all about what you do when you get on the other side of the door that matters. And that's this and part. This is networking, brand building, understanding who you are, understanding what your strengths are, understanding what you have to give to the world outside of the game. And you're going to spend a lot more time, hopefully all of us, in this world outside the game than you do in it. And so just think about that. So take up as much of this as possible. This is something that I started taking in, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm still growing in this space, but it's done wonders for my life outside of the game. And so I would encourage you guys to take this information, continue to grow, continue to level up, and let's continue to collaborate with each other.